We will get started. Recap the agenda real quick. We have an organ bias update, payment control, cancel archive, financial archive, profile roll, structure review, D23 refresher, some DAFR report overview, 90 screen information, and stop pay process, and agency objects and workday payroll. So a lot of good stuff, and hopefully a value add for everyone in attendance. So with that, I will say take it away, Andy, with the organ buys update.
Thank you, Justin. Good morning, everybody. Andy Keyser here, DAS e-procurement team. I am going to talk with you about the AP side of organ buys and try to answer a few frequently asked questions that we get and tickets we see going to our agency support. I don't believe we have time for questions during my quick presentation, but please input them in the chat and we will follow up with you. So let's talk a little bit because we were here the last time and I received a request for a little bit more in depth. So this is kind of building off the last one. So we're going to start a little bit in the middle here. But what you'll recognize on this top screen, this top part of the screenshot is the account code segments that are in Oregon buys. So we have 14 of them, formerly 16, but we recently combined the grant number, grant phase, project number, project phase. So these 14 are essentially the things that you can control on the AP side. You can select them. They're selected initially by the people doing the purchase, so either the end users or the procurement shop. But they can be modified by you guys before they flow into R stars. So I kind of put a little map so you can see on the bottom half on the 530 screen. I put the 14 numbers for where each of them go. The other items that come over is basically anything on this 530 screen. So the invoice number, date, description come over, the amount comes through either for the document or for the line item, and the appropriation year, as well as this VU number that gets assigned. So those are the things that interface, the things you have control over on these account codes are the index, the PCA, the comptroller and agency object, etc. I want to bring your attention to the multi-purpose code field. This one is field number 8. We can see the multi-purpose code field down here in the bottom left-hand corner. This one, if you input something in Oregon buys, it will let you do it. However, when it flows to R stars, it's going to overwrite whatever you put in Oregon buys, and it's going to populate it with the purchase order number. I see a question about moving the slides in chat. I've only moved one slide, so we should be on slide 5. So hopefully that's what you're seeing. I have not navigated too much. That multi-purpose code field that gets the PO number is it's a truncated form of the number. So we drop off the agency, which is kind of the prefix, and we drop off the release number, which is the suffix, and you're just getting what's in the PO number. And that is so this data can be transferred into the data mart and queried in OB. So that transfer happens once a week. So the week following, when this interfaces from Oregon buys to R stars, you will be able to do a data mart query for your purchase order. However, like I said, if you input something in the multi-purpose code field in Oregon buys, and that's what you want in there, it's going to get overridden by the multi-purpose code field, by the PO number in the multi-purpose code field. You do have the ability to re-input on the 530 screen. So just because it's giving you this PO number down here does not mean you have to keep it. So that's a little bit about what the account codes are and how they flow over. I'm going to advance. So now we're on slide number 6. And this is going to show you what you can do on the change order screen. So typically when, I know this is a little small and blurry because it's hard to squeeze in there, but on this example, I think this is what we see the most is that end user making the purchase is going to input maybe only a single account code. They have to put in at least something. And the PCA is the most common one. So it will come over and you will see it like this. When you're in that invoice, you can navigate to the change orders tab, and then you get 3 subtabs. You get items, accounting, and summary. Navigating to accounting is where you're going to want to be most often. And what it will let you do is input on this top line is what you can fill out. So you can change the PCA and you can add any other of the accounting codes you want. Specifically, and we see a lot with comptroller object, agency object. But if you have something else you need to add, you can do it yourself in the AP change order, and you don't need to send it back to the person making the purchase. So what you would do is you would input this, you would clear out the information that was in there earlier, and then you would click the save based on percentages button and the rebuild for all items button. And then you would navigate back to the summary tab and it would show you the results of your changes. So say, okay, you deleted this PCA and then you input this PCA, this agency object on the line, and it will be easy to do. And then when you submit it for approval, so it goes to that AP supervisor step, it will then apply that change order and update the accounting codes. One other quick thing I want to mention is we see the question a lot of, okay, the person ordered $50 worth of items, but there was a shipping charge and the invoice we got is for $55, and they've been kicking it back to the PO side. You do not have to do that either. When you go into the invoice on the general tab, you will see there are 2 line items for you. There's the miscellaneous line item or the freight line item, and you are able to add in an additional dollar amount so that you can have that invoice match and it will automatically update that purchase order. So that will save you a little bit of work of having to send that purchase order back to the person who made the order. We have some reporting available, and that can be navigated to by going to the settings gear cog and then the reports tab. And then scrolling down, this is going to be the most useful report for you guys if you don't know about this. It's the second one under other. You can only access it if you're in the AP role, and you can see the financial invoice reconciliation, and that will give you a breakdown of what's flowing over from Oregon buys into our stars for a given time period. So I just wanted to bring attention to that in case you haven't been using it. Some agencies we send it over on a daily basis so they can get that report in that. And if your agency wants that, we can set it up for you. Just reach out to us. This last item about the interface is from our training document. So if you navigate to the Oregon Buys page and go to our Oregon Buys agency training, you will see a document called the interface to R Stars Crosswalk, and that will give you a little bit more information about the accounting codes and what flows over from Oregon Buys. So it's a useful tool that's available on our training page. And then lastly, and I know I'm up against the timeline, but I wanted to bring attention to our Oregon Buys Champions user group. Um, this group, we have representatives from a lot of agencies, typically 2 or 3 representatives. Often they're on the procurement side, but this is available to AP users as well. And we are looking to expand it out to kind of an AP user champions user group. So what this does is gets you access to a chat where you can bounce questions off each other with other people in kind of the same situation as you, as well as we have a monthly 2-hour meeting. It's the second Wednesday of each month. So it'll be next Wednesday this month. So it's kind of used for one or two people at the agency to come to the group, ask questions on behalf of their agency, and then take the information that we share and disseminate it back to their teammates. So if you have any interest in being part of our Champions user group, reach out to me via email or Teams, or put something in this chat, and I would be happy to get you added to that group. And then lastly, we have our system release messages, which can be subscribed to by accessing this, and it will give you information. Occasionally, it's not very often we have an outage in Oregon Buys, but if we have an outage, we'll send an update via the listserv. And we also send out information when we do a production release, and we will provide the information that's in that new release. So if you want to be part of our listserv, there's a subscription link here, or it can be found on our state procurement site. With that, I think I went just a minute or two over, so I apologize. But thank you all for taking the time. We are available to help, and if you need any assistance, please do not hesitate to reach out to my team, to myself or my team at DAS eProcurement, and we are happy to meet with you guys or help in any way we can, or provide additional training or guidance to you guys. With that, I will pass it along to Juan, who is
Hey,
here from
Andy.
DAS to talk about payment control and cancel archive. Yes, Amber.
There was just a couple questions in the chat, and you're actually 3 minutes early because Justin was short. So, did they
Oh,
get?
good.
I
can
just want to
take
make
some
sure they
questions.
were answered. So it says
Oh, very
there was a
good.
question. Do they have to have both? We have to, let's see, both add correct
We have,
code to the top line and clear the incorrect code from the lower line. And
yeah.
someone answered it. Just want to make sure we're all on the same
Yep,
page.
that's correct. So occasionally I've gotten an error message where it says you still have items on the top line. But generally, yeah, Antonia is correct in the response. But if it's giving you any trouble, clear out what was there before, and you can do again, it's those two buttons. You have to do save based on dollars or save based on percentages. I usually do it as 100% and save based on percentages, and then click that rebuild for all items button, and then that will process it through the system, and you kind of have to sit on that screen for a minute after you click that rebuild for all items until you get the green message saying that it's complete.
Perfect. And then there's one more.
I can see. Yeah, I see it.
I'm going
Thank
to go
you.
ahead and read it so everyone can see it. I don't use Oregon
Sure.
Buys, but my agency does. I'm sorry if I missed this and you already said it, but is the MPCD always the PO for all agencies in Oregon Buys?
That's correct, Angelique. The multi-purpose code is always the purchase order number for all agencies in Oregon Buys. But again, you have the option, if you don't want to use it for that purpose, you can overwrite it on the 530 screen and save it.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Andy.
You are welcome. Thank you, everybody. And keep those questions coming if you have them, and I will hand it over to Juan.
All right, well, thank you. Good morning. My name is Juan Maraver, and I'm going to, I just have a couple of slides for this presentation. This is for, let me see if I'm going to take control here. So the purpose of the payment archive is to remove records within the payment control and payment cancel table that meet the archive criteria. The archive of warrant records this year include the expired warrants, warrants canceled, stopped, and redeemed. Those will be before July 2022. And next one. The job runs every year, and this year is scheduled to run this Thursday, February 20th. There should be no system downtime. There's no agency responsibility for this archive. The most visible change will be on 44 and 47 screens. Archived warrants will not be accessible. This archive is necessary to maximize system efficiency and minimize data storage needs. And that's all my presentation. Any questions?
I don't
There's
see
no
anything, Juan.
questions. There's no questions. Alan is next.
Thank you, Juan. Okay, so my name is Alan, and my topic today is the upcoming Financial Archive. So this year's Financial Archive will run on Friday, April 4th, after the normal nightly batch cycle. So on that Friday, there should be no downtime. On Saturday, April 5th, the RSTARS IT file will be closed while SFMS works on our validation process. On Monday, April 7th, SFMS will not run the expedite cycle at noon. The RSTARS IT file will be closed while we complete our validation. We plan to run a batch cycle Monday night. We will open the IT file as soon as possible and send out an SFMS news once the system is open. When the RSTARS IT file is closed, you can view and update profile screens, use the financial inquiry screens, and the drill down screens. You cannot create, edit, or release batches. The records that are archived from seven of the RSTARS tables are moved to the data mart for an additional 2 years. Those 7 tables are easy to identify in OBI as they all begin with the name SFMS-archive. The transaction shown on this slide has not archived because it is protected by capital construction for this agency. We need to look at the D23 fund 4674 to see that the associated appropriated fund is a capital construction fund. So this, all right, seems like I'm skipping some slides here. I apologize. Okay, I apologize. So I'm on slide 23. The appropriated fund for this D23 fund profile is 3020. You can see on this bottom line there. Appropriated funds 3020, 4020, 6020, and 8020 are capital construction funds. Mouse is not behaving here. I apologize. I am on slide 24 now. This centrally maintained profile protects AY 2013 capital construction records from being archived. This profile is reviewed every 2 years and may be updated based on the effective end dates of this agency's appropriation profiles. So you can see here on key 2, it says 2013. That represents the appropriation year on transactions that are protected for this agency. And this chart shows the summarized record counts from the 13 financial tables involved in the financial archive. Last year, we archived over 17% of the records in the financial tables. And as you can see, we're fast approaching 1 billion records in these 13 tables before the archive. So I suspect this year we will probably be over that billion mark before we archive the records. I apologize for the problems with my mouse. Please let me know if anybody has any questions about this year's financial archive.
Alan, there is a question in the chat. It says, Elizabeth asks, when I run the archive reports, it only goes back to AY19. Is there a way to go through back?
To go to get records older than 2019 or AY19. I'm trying to think. There's the archived all accounting events, which is it's a different table. I'll have to check on that and get back to you, Elizabeth. I'm not sure if possibly the archived all accounting event table shows records older than AY19, but I'll double check on that and follow up with you. Unless somebody happens to know the answer to that. It does not. Okay, thank you, Trudy. So I think AY19 is the oldest that you're able to query. And yes, retention of the records in the data mart is only 6 years. So when this archive runs, will the archive tables change? What data will the archive tables change? What data they show too? Yes, so those 7 archived tables will drop off the oldest year and add 1 new year. So they will the records in there will change, dropping the oldest and adding 1 more newer year. Does that make sense? Okay, perfect. Great questions, everybody. Anything else for the moment? And you can always contact me if a question does come up. So up next is Rose to talk about the profile role. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Rose Maddox, and Amber has graciously volunteered to navigate the slides for me so I don't crash our presentation. So next slide, please, Amber. So this is about the profile program role. This program sets up the new profiles that you're going to need for the upcoming appropriation year when we come to appropriation year 2027. It will run on April 9th, 2025, which is just a few months from now. It will create new profiles for fiscal year 26, fiscal year 27, and AY 27. It will not create new profiles for your agents that your agency no longer needs. Next slide, please. So the profile, we're going to look at which profile screens are involved, how the system determines which agency profiles to roll, what the new profiles will look like. We'll go through some examples. And we'll go through what you need to do at your agency. And then there's some important reminders and helpful hints at the end of this presentation. Next slide, please, Amber. So the profile screens that are involved, there's 11 profiles that use the AY key, the appropriation profile, the index CPA relationship profile, cost allocation, index code, program cost account, controller relationship edit, organization code, DO4 program code, controller source group, controller object, and agency object. There are 2 other AY tables in our STARS, but Oregon does not use them, which is the D34 and the D52 profiles. Next slide, please, Amber. So which profile screens are involved? There's 2 profiles that currently involve that use the FY key, which is the D23 fund and the D73 cash fund. So for both of those profiles, you will have an upcoming FY26 and an FY27 profile built. Next slide, please. So how the system determines which agency profiles to roll. The profiles AY or FY must equal the current values that are on the 97 screen. And the 97 screen is basically a system control screen that we centrally at RStars manage. The status code on your profile must be active, and the effective end date must be blank or greater than 6/30/2025. This prevents old or unnecessary profiles from being created for the next FY or AY. Next slide, please, Amber. So this is an example of the 97 screen. It shows all the different system parameters that the system has, not all of them, but different system parameters that the system checks for as it processes your transactions. And as I mentioned, this screen is managed by internally by SFMS folks. Next slide, please, Amber. So what will your new profiles look like? The AY profiles will have one new record created. The AY will be 2027. The effective start date will be 7/1/2025. The effective end date will either be blank if it was previously blank or 3 years greater than the date on the current profile. The exception is the 20 appropriation profiles. The effective end date for those will be 12/31/2027. Next slide, please. So the FY profiles will have two records created, one with FY26, one with FY27. Both of the effective start dates will have an effective start date of 7/1/2025. Both for the effective end date, with the effective end date the same as the current profile. Next slide, please, Amber. Here's some examples of what the new profiles would be. An AY25 active 24 screen index profile with a blank effective end date. Is this an AY or an FY profile? Is it for FY or AY per the 97 profile? For current FY or AY per the 97 profile? Is it active? Is the effective end date blank or greater than 6/30/2025? Next slide, please. An AY25 active 24 screen index profile with a blank effective end date. Will that have no new profile? Will it have two new profiles, one for FY25 and one for FY26? Will it have one new profile for AY27? The next slide, please. So the correct answer for this is it will have one new profile for AY27 with an effective start date of 7/1/2025 and a blank effective end date. Next slide, please, Amber. So here's another example, an active FY25 D23 screen fund profile with a blank effective end date. Will it have one profile for FY26 with an effective start date of 7/1/2025? Would have one profile for FY27 with an effective start date of 7/1/2025 with an end date of 6/30/2027. Will it have two profiles, one for FY26 and one for FY27, or will it have no new profiles? Next slide, please. So for the active FY25 D23 screen fund profile with a blank effective end date, the correct answer is it will have two profiles, one for FY26 with an effective start date of 7/1/2025 and a blank effective end date, and one for FY27 with an effective start date of 7/1/2025 and the blank effective end date. Next slide, please. So here is one more example, an AY25 active 20 screen profile with an effective end date of 12/31/2025. Will it have one profile for AY27, an effective start date of 7/1/2025, and an end date of 12/31/2027? No profile? for one profile for AY27 with an effective start date of 7/1/2025 and effective end date of 6/30/27. Next slide, please. The correct answer, since it is a 20 profile, will have one profile for AY27 with an effective start date of 7/1/2025 and effective end date of 12/31/2027. That will allow you to use your appropriations for that AY through the end of December of the end of the AY. Next slide, please. So what do I need to do for my agency? Before April 9th, 2025, review your agency structure to determine the level of change that needs to be made for AY27. There's basically three different scenarios in this. One, your agency needs no changes in the accounting structure. Minor changes are needed, including maybe a new appropriation numbers, or substantial changes is needed. Profiles need to be created or deleted. Next slide, please. If no changes are needed to the accounting structure, before the profile roll, ensure that the necessary profiles are active and have appropriate effective end dates to generate new profiles. After the roll, but before using the new profiles, review and make changes to titles as necessary. Next slide, please. So if minor changes are needed, including new appropriation numbers, before the profile roll, ensure that the necessary profiles are active, have appropriate effective end dates to generate new profiles. After the roll, but before using the new profiles, again, review and make changes to modifications as necessary. And I'm not sure why that is repeated twice. Next slide, please. For substantial change, if substantial change is needed, profiles need to be created or deleted. Before the roll, inactivate or place an effective end date of less than 6/30/25 on profiles to be deleted. They must not have balances. If they do, a profile will be needed for adjustments. After the roll, profiles must be returned to their original configuration to allow your transactions for the rest of the current AY to process. After the roll, agency establishes their new agency profiles. That's for ones that are replacing the ones that you're deleting. After the roll, complete and submit appropriate forms for SFMS to set up your new D23 or D73 cash fund profiles. Next slide, please. Important reminders. Before July 1, 2025, agencies will need to set up two 25-screen agency control profiles, one for FY26 and one for FY27. If you don't do this, your transactions for from July 1st, 2025 forward for AY27 will not be able to process. Review your 91 screen report request profiles. Will your dates need to be changed, or will you need to create new 91 screen report profiles? Review your 550 screen recurring transaction profiles. Will they need to be new profiles need to be created to accommodate the changes to your agency accounting structure? Changes to profile data elements must not be made once the profile has been used. If you have questions, contact your SFMS analyst. Also, please review the SFMS test manual prompt to creation of new year profiles. Next slide. So, are there any questions? I don't see anything in the chat. So next up is Liz Schultz.
Thank you, Rose. Good morning, everyone. My name is Liz. I'm going to be going over the topic of program structure reviews today. So program structure reviews, SFMS presents about this topic every 2 years. before the start of a new biennium to prepare for the new biennium. We're coming up on AY 27. That'll start on July 1st. So program structure specifically are reviews focused on those agencies that are going to be making changes for the new AY, specifically changes to the DO4 profile in RSTARS, the program code. Now, the agency, SABRS, which is the Statewide Audit and Budget Reporting Section, and SFMS all have a role in this process. So this slide kind of gives you the major steps of what the program structure process involves, and we'll go into some more detail on that in the next slide. So one thing to keep in mind, if your agency is planning to make some changes for AY 27 to your program structure, it's really best practice for agency budget and accounting staff to coordinate on that. Because if you're making up changes to your program codes, it's going to impact how budgets are set up, how things are reporting for budget to actuals. Accounting staff also needs to be involved because they may need to update profiles like PCAs to reference any changes in those DO4 program codes. So really important just to try to make sure you're keeping everybody in the loop, since there is a budget piece and there is an accounting piece. So today I'm going to go over RSTARS program structure, just give you an overview of what that is, talk about some responsibilities and timelines. We also have some recommended practices and a few tips to avoid some common pitfalls that we've seen in the past. So we do have two different systems that we are trying to align when we're talking about program structures. Orbitz is the budget system. We do have Sean Miller from SABRS. He's also going to give a presentation kind of from the budget perspective on these program structure reviews. So we have the central repository of budget information for the state, and then we have what we should all be familiar with in this user group as RSTARS, which is our accounting information. There's some shared data elements between these two systems that we want to make sure are aligned so you can have proper budget to actual reporting and line up information from both systems. So this is an example of a structure alignment spreadsheet. So if you have been involved in this process in the past for your agency, this may look familiar to you. Every agency will have one of these. SABRS, the statewide budget group, they maintain the most recent copy for all agencies. So if you're not sure where this spreadsheet is, you can reach out to them to get the most current version. There's information on the left-hand side of this spreadsheet specific to Orbitz, and the information on the right hand in those columns is related to RSTARS. So we're going to go in the next slides and give you a little bit more information about what is contained on this spreadsheet. So on the left-hand side, we have that Orbitz information, really, again, that budget side information, the different summary cross-reference levels referred to as SCRs, the detailed cross-reference levels, the DCRs. We've got the reporting level numbers, and we have Orbitz cross-reference numbers included on that side. So as you're looking through this spreadsheet, making updates, working with SABRS for anything that may have changed or needs to change for your agency for the new AY. From the SFMS side, we're a little bit more concerned with the RSTARS side of this spreadsheet. We've got multiple different RSTARS program code levels. So all of the information on the right-hand side of this alignment spreadsheet should map directly to information on the RSTARS DO4 profile. So there's up to 9 different program code levels agencies can use for their budget structure. We've got some that are pretty standard. You're always going to have level 0 is just the system default, the very highest level. Level 1 is always going to be specific for the agency. Level 2 typically is an optional budget placeholder. I know SABRS has been working with a lot of agencies to get that budget placeholder in place. If your agencies vary slightly, you can work with SABRS on that. Level 3 is typically the SCR level. And level 4 is typically the DCR level for those summary and detail cross-reference levels. There's also additional flexibility if you want to have lower levels tracked for your agency underneath that DCR level. We have in R-Stars the option to go up to 9 different program code levels. Not very many agencies use that many, but depending on what you want to report on and how you want to track information, there is the option to do that. Each agency is going to set up their structure based on their agency needs. So some are going to look a little bit different than others. One requirement when you're setting up these alignment spreadsheets is that agencies must have a one-to-one relationship between the DO4 profile and the orbits cross-reference down to the DCR level. So you can have additional levels, but you at least have to go down to the DCR level and have one program code associated with one DCR. Again, this spreadsheet, if you haven't seen it before, you might want to take a look at it. If you've got questions, Sabres is really working with the agencies to get the final version of this spreadsheet. But if you've got questions on the R-Stars side, please reach out. We can provide some guidance of how you might want to set some things up. So looking at this spreadsheet, I think it's helpful to have a little bit of a visual to see how this information actually looks in R-Stars. So in this example, we're continuing. This is a made-up agency, the Oregon Department of Weather. They have 2 major programs, the wind program and the rain program. And then they have, wind monitoring, wind capture, rain monitoring, rain capture. They've got some other smaller programs in there as well. So for this alignment, the agency has program level 4, 1210 wind capture on this spreadsheet. So if we were going into R-Stars to take a look and see how that was set up on the DO4 profile, we would see the information, the agency, the program code, the program title. We'd also have the Orbits X reference number listed on there to crosswalk the 2 systems. And then we could also see how things roll up. So we've got, this was a program level code 4 in our example. Towards the bottom, you can see the program hierarchy for that program code and how it rolls up. So this is an example of a DO4 profile. In R-Stars, you can go look up your DO4 profiles. These profiles can't be changed by the agency. Sabres maintains these profiles. So if changes are needed, they can only be done, before a new biennium starts. You can add ones during a biennium, but you can't the only time you can make changes is before the start of the new biennium to make sure we're keeping consistent information in the accounting system. So once a DO4 has been set up, the accounting side of it is to make sure you have profiles that are pointing to that program code. It's typically on the PCA that you will see the reference to a specific program code. So when you're entering transactions, you're not actually entering the program code on every single transaction you're inputting in R-Stars. You're entering a PCA and it's pointing to a specific program code on that PCA profile. And that's how everything rolls up in the system, so you can track budget to actual and compare Orbit systems information to R-Stars information. So in this example, PCA, there's 2 fields that we are looking at when we're trying to set up our PCA to align with the program code. We're putting the program code in there. In this example, we've got 1210 entered. We're also putting the agency budget program level indicator. So in our example, this was a program code level 4. So we're putting level 4 on our PCA profile. So that when you're setting up those profiles, those should match to make sure information is being summarized consistently. That will indicate how things appear on the 61 screen in R-Stars at what level data is summarized for that PCA and program code. So that's just a quick overview of how program code information is input in R-Stars, how PCAs point to program codes so we can track that information. Responsibilities and timelines. So For agencies, if you're planning on making changes for AY27, in March and April, you want to take a look and see if you need any changes. Changes could be driven by an agency's decision to restructure. Maybe your existing program code structure isn't working for you. You want to make some changes. You may decide at the agency you want to make changes for the new AY to how it's been set up in the past. The other way you could have changes is legislation. Maybe you have a new program that's coming in, or restructuring something in a bill that you need to modify your accounting structure for. So March and April, trying to take a look, see if you're planning on having any changes, or if you know of any upcoming bills that would cause changes. Once you have that information, notify Sabres and SFMS that you plan to have changes, and you would submit the required documentation to Sabres and copy your SFMS analyst. April and May, Sabres is working with agencies to review those alignment spreadsheets, make sure all the information is correct. They would be updating any DO4 profiles and coordinating with the agency. If there's any PCAs that point to that DO4 that you're wanting to delete, those have to be deleted first before Sabres can actually remove those codes. Sabres would then be inputting any changes in the DO4 profile for AY27. Agencies, generally the May-June timeframe, they're updating their PCAs, they're reviewing that those DO4s have been set up appropriately to prepare for the new AY, setting up any new AY27 PCAs that are going to be needed for new or updated DO4s. And then as soon as that work is completed, notify your SFMS analyst, and then SFMS does a review to make sure everything's set up. We try to complete those reviews before July 1st, before the start of the biennium, so we can make sure all that coding is good and ready to go, so you could start coding AY27 transactions starting on July 1. Sometimes there are delays if bills are waiting to pass, those types of things. Keep us updated, let us know so we can plan around that. We do not advise using any of your AY27 new accounting structure until SFMS has completed our review to make sure that everything's set up appropriately to not cause posting problems. Okay. So just a general timeline. Again, this may or may not apply to your agency. It just depends if you're going to have updates to your DO4 profiles for AY27 from what you used in AY25. If you don't have any changes, no actions is needed. So we do have a few recommended practices we like to share to agencies. Not all agency program structures are going to follow these 4 recommended practices we have on the next few slides. But it's just something to keep in mind when you're setting up your structure, things to keep things consistent and easy to follow. So our first recommended practice is try to keep program codes in a logical numbering sequence when you're setting up an agency, setting up a new program, or you're restructuring. So in this example for our Oregon Department of Weather program, all the program codes that are associated with the rain program begin with a 2. This isn't required, but it just makes things easier when you're sorting reports and you're trying to get an idea of all the different program codes related to a specific program. So try to have some sort of numbering convention that you're using for program codes. Make sure to leave space in case additions need to be added as well. The second recommended practice, Sabres recommends agencies set up budget-only PCAs to load budget against. So you would have a PCA, it would be budget only, you wouldn't be coding actual transactions against it, you would just be loading the budget to that PCA. That PCA is going to point to a higher level 2 program code for those budget appropriation and allotment entries. Then when you're recording the actual transactions, you would be using PCAs that report to a lower level. So that just means you can load, in this example, the budget at the program level 2,000. So you've got 10,000 budget for the entire RAIN program. But when you're recording your actuals, you can split it up between the RAIN monitoring and RAIN capture. So you would just have different PCAs that would reference those different program level codes. So a lot of agencies already have budget-only PCAs set up. If it's not something you've done in the past and you would like to do that in the future, let us know if you have any questions on how you would want to set that up, just to make it a little bit easier to load budgets and allotments at that higher level. The third recommended practice is for all other PCAs, besides those budget-only PCAs, use the lowest level program code on your PCA. So in this example, the lowest program level code for the agency was level 4. So they would set up all their PCAs to point to those level 4 program codes. This just keeps consistency. It makes it easier to set up PCAs because they're all going to use level 4. Make sure data is going to be summarized at the lowest level in your DAFR reports on the 61 R-star screen if you use that to track data. Again, a recommended practice. Not all agencies do this, but something to keep in mind when you're looking at your program structure for your agency. The final recommended practice is making sure the agency budget program level indicator on the 26 PCA screen for the program code you entered matches the program level on the DO4. So in this example, program code 1210 is program level 04 on the DO4 screen. So when we set up our PCA that points to that program code level, our agency program level indicator is also 4. If you set it to, a level 3 or a level 2, it's going to impact at what level information is summarized on the 61 screen, the R-star 61 screen. We always recommend doing the lowest level, but again, this is a recommended practice. If your agency has a different way of setting things up, you may see some variation in that when you're reviewing your own structure. Finally, I wanted to go over a few pitfalls that we've seen in prior AYs, some things that when SFMS is doing our review, we're definitely looking out for these things. We just want to share this information with you as well, just so you're aware of why we do these reviews and what types of things we're trying to avoid. So the first tip is to inactivate or delete any PCAs prior to inactivating or deleting the program code. So we're going to do the profile role that Rose mentioned on April 9th. At that point, all of your codes for AY27 will be in R-stars. You won't be able to code transactions to them because we haven't started AY27 yet, but you can start cleaning up your profiles. If you know there's PCAs you're not going to be using, you can delete those. They haven't had any transactions recorded against them yet, so it's okay to delete them. Those PCAs should be deleted before the program codes are deleted or inactivated by Sabres. We want to make sure that we don't have any PCAs that are pointing to old program codes that are no longer there, because the system only verifies the program code is valid when you originally saved the PCA profile. We've made some edits to prevent this from happening, but it's just something to make sure you're cleaning up your accounting structure. If you're going to be removing program codes, you want to also remove any PCAs that relate to those program codes because they won't be valid anymore. The next tip is do not make changes to existing program codes for PCAs if they already have transactions posted to them during that AY. So we get this question pretty regularly during the biennium. SFMS never recommends changing profiles mid-biennium if they've already been used to record transactions. This is because if you change the profile, it doesn't change how any of the prior transactions processed. And we have different system generated transactions that occur, closeouts at year end. If agencies set up an invoice that's tracked on the 64 screen and then are trying to apply subsequent payments against it, if that code has changed somewhere in between there, it can cause all sorts of errors or posting issues, making things look unusual in reports or causing unusual errors that have to be resolved. So if you have program codes or PCAs and AY27 has already started after July, make sure before trying to change those that transactions haven't been coded there already. If that's the case, something new would need to be set up. We might need to work with you to correct those transactions that previously posted. So just good rule of thumb, don't change anything if it's already had transactions posted in that AY. Now, if you had transactions in AY 25 and you're changing the AY 27 profile, that's fine. Just make sure there's no transactions that were posted in the current AY. The other thing to check for, Sabres is looking for this. SFMS is also looking for this. When DO4 changes are made, if you're changing the roll up of how the program codes report and roll up on your Orbit's alignment spreadsheet, Sabres needs to make sure to resave any codes that, if there's a level 3 program code that's going to be changed, any level 4 codes that point to it also have to be resaved for it to accept that new program hierarchy. So if you see after you request changes to your DO4s, agencies should be reviewing that all Sabres made all the updates as you expect. If you're seeing issues or have questions on how things have been set up, reach out to Sabres and they can work with you to get those modified and corrected. Again, we're also checking those when we do our SFMS program structure reviews to make sure everything set up in RStars matches to what's on the alignment spreadsheet. Finally, we really encourage you to not delay on finalizing your AY27 program structure. If you're going to have changes, there's several steps that are involved. You're working with Sabres. The accounting staff's going to have to update PCAs. Try to get that work done as soon as you can prior to July 1st to the extent possible. We're getting closer to year end. SFMS has potentially many agencies to review, and we want to try to complete all of those reviews prior to July 1 so we can make sure your accounting structure for the new AY is ready to go. We recognize there may be some delays outside of your control if you're waiting for legislation that's not yet been finalized, but just let us know and we can work with you to accommodate that. In summary, just keep in mind for AY27 program structure reviews, SFMS has a role in that process. We're usually doing our reviews in May and June and through the beginning of July. Again, we're only reviewing agencies that have changes. We could do a full or partial review depending on how significant your changes are. Again, if you want us to do a full review of your structure, you can ask us to take a look at it if you've got questions. If you want us to look at your existing structure, we can do that. And during those reviews, we're looking at the DO4 screen, making sure it aligns to the Orbit's alignment spreadsheet, making sure everything's been set up correctly so it will summarize up to the right level for reporting, and that all your PCAs have been established appropriately, that they have the appropriate lookup information on them. Some agencies will also look at indexes if they put D23 funds, appropriation numbers, or agency code 3s on that profile, and RTIs. So there's several things that we look at just to make sure you're not going to run into any unusual errors when you try coding transactions in the new AY with new structure. So that was quite a bit of information here. I'm going to pause and see if we have any questions. I do see one in the chat from Trudy. Which AY PCAs need to be deleted in the May-June category? It says AY27, but should that be AY21? No, this is actually for AY27. This isn't deleting out old profiles. This isn't the archive. This is making sure everything is set up appropriately for AY27. So the only reason you would have to delete PCAs in the new AY is if you're doing some sort of agency restructure, maybe you're combining programs and you're changing how you're going to have your DO4s set up, and you're deciding you're going to remove some because you've combined some things. At that point, you may have PCAs that point to those DO4s that you want to remove for AY27. So if AY27 hasn't started yet, you're in May and June, you could go ahead and remove those so you don't have those unnecessary PCAs out there that are no longer going to be valid for AY27. Thank you, Trudy. I'll give it another second to see if we have any questions. Again, as you're going through this process, feel free to reach out to your SFMS support analyst or myself. We can help you with questions you have related to this process. And if you're not one of those agencies that are having any changes from AY25 to AY27, there's nothing that you would have to do for these reviews.
Hi, everybody. Looks like break time is over. My name is Sean Miller from Savers. I'm hoping you can hear me okay. I started getting warnings about network connection towards the end of Liz's presentation. So hopefully you can hear me. Oh, great. I got a thumbs up. Some of this information is duplicative of what Liz just went through. So I'm going to brush over some of it. But what we're talking about here is, like she said, joining, aligning the orbit system and R-stars. And as you're going through the budget build process and then the legislative process, SCRs, the DCRs may change, new ones might get created. You just might decide that you need additional lower level program codes. All of those changes are going to require changes to the alignment spreadsheet that we'll go over later, and require you to have a discussion with Sabres and SFMS to make sure that we track all that stuff. So you'll send in a program alignment spreadsheet if you have changes to the normal Orbit's help inbox that is listed there. You don't need to do it if you don't have any changes. We're actually running a report to see what agencies have DCRs or SCRs that exist in the budget development, that did not exist in the current biennium. And so we do have a list of, sorry, I didn't turn on my camera. Should turn on my camera. We do have some, so we will have a list of what agencies had DCR and SCR changes, but there may be other changes that lower level changes that you require. So you'll send that in. When you do send in the spreadsheet, first of all, ask us if you need a copy of it. We'll be happy to send that to you. But when you do send it in, we want you to highlight what you've changed and put in a little note about what that change is, just to make sure that we understand. And we'll go over an example of that, of what that would look like. Here's that example. Liz showed this earlier. This is the program alignment spreadsheet that we discussed. There's a level 2 agency-wide budget profile, which Liz mentioned briefly. I'm going to go into that a little more. Essentially, if you are appropriating at the SCR level and there is some issue with how things are broken out in your bill or budget report, and you're going to be short on funds and you need to move some funds around, if you don't have that level 2 appropriation level, it can be difficult to cover funds when you need to between divisions, and it will require legislative action to move funds around. So that's kind of why we and LFO have asked for that. They don't really like to do the budget report corrections if they don't have to. So that's enough said about that. These yellow highlighted ones in this example are the changes that this agency requested to make. And then they have notes over here on the side that tells us what exactly is going on. Sometimes when these are being shifted around between SCRs or between different levels, then it's hard to figure out exactly what's going on. So the description is really helpful. So we would like to know if you are planning on making changes, and just an email sent to Sabres will work. Include your SFMS support analyst on that email, copy them on that. Like I said, we are going to run some queries to see who we expect to receive changes from based on SCR and DCR changes or additions, but there may be other changes that you want to make that we would not be aware of. So just let us know, and then the sooner the better send in the program alignment spreadsheet with those changes. The profile roll, as we've already talked about, happens April 9th, so we can start making changes right after that. I understand that bills go through the process at different times during the legislative session, but as soon as you think you've got a good read on what's going to be included, then if you could send in that spreadsheet, we'll get it entered. We'll work with SFMS analysts to audit those changes, make sure everything looks good, and then we'll be ready to go for the new biennium. So agencies, complete the form, send it in, copy your SFMS analyst. Once we, Sabres, make the DO4 program code changes in the system, you want to look at that and see if it matches what you were expecting. And then any additional changes, work with SFMS on that. There is actually a OB1 query out there that replicates the program alignment spreadsheet. It's under the DAS Sabres item in the OB1 system. It's also in the reference report section at the bottom. It just doesn't have agency drop-down list in that one. I believe everybody has rights to go into the different areas in there, but I'll be sending out a message within the next week or so that has more description of where that report is, and also reminders of this process. So I'll be contacting you about that pretty soon. Once we get it, we're gonna check your alignment sheet out. We're gonna get it entered into our stars, and then work with the SFMS for them to complete their review of the changes. I got a question here. Yes, you will need to resubmit if you requested changes for this current biennium. We still need to receive. Well, if the changes were in this current biennium and they were already entered into the system, then the profile roll will just move those changes forward. So you don't need to do anything about that. If you have new changes that will only take effect in the 27 biennium, then you would need to submit an alignment spreadsheet. But changes that were made this biennium, no problem, as long as it's before April 9th, they will roll forward into the new biennium. And I think that is all I have. And Carlene is after me if I don't see any more questions, which I do not. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Do I have my camera on? No, I do not. There I am. Hi. I just want to send out a quick D23 refresher because of the new biennium, and I know we're going to get lots of D23 requests because of the new programs that are being set up, I'm sure. So let's go over this really quickly. Some of this is just refresher for some of you. Some of you are still really new at D23s. So this is just a good quick review or good look, first look. Okay, the D23 form that we use and we request, because some of you have still been sending me outdated request forms, can be found in two different spots on the DAS website. One is on the DAS homepage under Forms, under Accounting, down at the bottom, and it says Fund Profiles Request D23. The second place is found on the SFMS webpage on the within the DAS website, and it's under Forms and Publications, SFMS Forms, Fund Profile D23. These are a fillable PDF and can be sent to the D23 email box once completed. So let's go over the sections that seem to trip everybody up lately. Is the first element that I review is there has to be legal legislation with every D23 request. It's either going to be a House bill, a Senate bill, it could be an ORS, e-board minutes, might be the Oregon Constitution, might be chapter law, section and subsection once the legislation is through and they have that posted out there. However, what SFMS is looking for essentially is spending authority. Where is the budget for this D23 request? We are not looking for what Treasury fund have you been granted. A lot of you try this, but we are looking for what is the budget. The next thing we're going to start looking for is, are there any mismatches in the information provided? This is why we ask for what appropriation number are you going to be attaching to this particular D23? And there can be multiple appropriations, so long as the appropriated fund on those appropriations all match to a single appropriated fund, because it's the appropriated fund that goes on the D23, not the appropriation number. But we need to know that further down the line, when you're setting up your 26 profiles or your PCAs, that when you do put those appropriations on those PCAs, it's not going to have an adverse reaction to the D23 fund that you are planning to use in setting up. So we're looking at, is the appropriation on the 20 screen have the same appropriated fund that you are requesting? We look for D23 fund numbers and the title as is it appropriate? Currently, we're looking at a fiscal year of 2025. Of course, that's going to change soon to 2027. But we do confirm that the fund number is available and not reused, or that this isn't already in play in our stars. And if it is found to be in play, then we do contact the agency as soon as it's identified to let them know that this fund number needs to be, they need to reassign a fund number, because the fund number is something that the agency does get to pick and choose. I don't get to pick and choose those numbers. We look at the cash fund, cash control, and treasury fund to make sure that they're all playing nicely together and are appropriate. Basically, the cash control is how do I want to see the cash being displayed on the 63 profile. So you can look at your cash there. Does my agency use a cash fund? This cash fund is on the D73. It is not a required element for a D23. That is at the agency's discretion to use. And or what treasury fund is not and cash control are not. Those are required elements on every D23. So we're looking for the appropriate treasury fund, and does the agency own that treasury fund? So all of these need to play nice. So if you do have a cash fund, cash control needs to be 3. Cash fund needs to be also aligned with and be associated with that treasury fund placed on that D23. There are SARS elements that get to be reviewed. The GAP fund, the G54, and the G54 description. So these are the 3 things that they will review for you and review for us to make sure that they are appropriate. And if the GAP fund is less than 4,000 or in the range of the 7,500s, a G54 indicator and description fields are required. If the fund is greater than 4,000, then the G54 indicator and the GASB 54 description should remain blank. But again, these 3 fields are ultimately reviewed by your assigned agency SARS analyst. Unfortunately, we have found that the review process can mandate an updated D23. In the past, we have allowed up to 3 changes and updates during review before requiring a new D23, but we have found that that has become very difficult sometimes and too many emails back and forth. So we are requiring now that if there is no legal legislation or if the legal legislation is appropriate, if there are any appropriated fund, local fund indicators, cash fund control, treasury fund, if any of these elements on this list are not found to be not appropriate or not correct, we are requesting and requiring new D23 forms. However, here's the however, any change requested by SARS, it's preferred that it be backed up with the email trail from SARS, because I have to have SARS approval on those elements to make changes. And so it does not need a new D23 request, and that sometimes can become quite cumbersome and onerous for the D23 packets when we're putting them together. So my preference is that we keep the email string for the 3 elements that SARS is reviewing, and if there are any changes requested by SFMS, we get a new form. There's also the other part of this is that SFMS, generally speaking, will have a review back before SARS a lot of the times, and so we can enter it into our STARS with just the SFMS review, because all of the elements that SARS review can be changed at future dates, but the elements primarily for any of the SFMS reviewed elements cannot be changed once it's set up. So changes can be requested to existing profiles, but there are only 4 elements. The title, if it doesn't represent a significant change from the original purpose of the fund, the gap fund, the G54 indicator, and the G54 description all can be changed with SARS approval. Now, with those SARS approved changes, depending on the timing of the changes, this may cause the agency to create a BT to move the equity account from one to another. So please work with your SFMS analyst if this is appropriate. If no other elements can be, no other elements can be changed on a D23 once it is used. So it's very important that the agency review after receipt of notification, generally speaking, it's going to be from Liz or myself, once it's set up in the system, that all elements are as requested or as anticipated. This is a shameless plug. D23 training is coming up. It's going to be much more comprehensive. So if you need a refresher, or if you just want a really good base training, we are having what's currently online is good for immediate use, but we are planning April 22nd to have D23 basic training, and then we're going to have a more advanced training on May 21st. This will be updated training, and special guests are anticipated and will be announced when signups are available in Workday. If you have any questions regarding D23, please send those questions to the D23 email box. The link is in the presentation. Any questions? I thought I saw something. Oh, Heather's laughing at me. Okay, so if there are no other questions, I'm going to turn it over to Scott, who will be talking about some report highlights.
Thank you, Carlene. All right. Hello, Why isn't my camera working? Oh, well. Oh, there it is. Hello, everyone. I am here to talk about the DAFR 7373 and 7380 reports. These are pretty simple reports, so I won't take up too much of the presentation's time. First off, we'll start with the DAFR 7373. So what is it? It's a report that displays the monthly treasury activity for all the transactions within all of your agency funds, though control accounting uses this report to track warrant redemption activity and for shared funds reconciliation. Your agencies can order this report themselves to check transactions from dedicated funds. So we'll be going over how to do that a little bit later. How do we read this report? Treasury activity will be listed by Treasury Fund and interface indicator for all CAS and SFMS agencies. The cash activity indicators are D for deposit, A for debit and credit advances, T for SFMS transfers, and M for CAS to SFMS transfers. The letters don't exactly line up with what I do, but it makes sense. On screen, we have an example of how this report will appear to you. You will notice that the indicator interface on the left-hand side of the report is D for deposits, which means this example reflects deposit transactions for this unnamed agency. Underneath the report displays various rows in which it uses to sort transactions from left to right: agency, transaction number, posted date, treasury document number, debit amount, and amount credited, with an indicator total on the bottom divided by the two column amounts, which is the sum of all the above transactions with respect to the two amount columns. If you want to know how much was debited or credited in a fund, and in total, look at these two bottom numbers. Moving on to the DAFR 7380, we have a trial balance report by Treasury Fund. The purpose of this report is very similar to the DAFR 7373 we just talked about, so you'll be seeing a fair amount of overlap on this slide. It's used by system control for warrant redemption activity and for shared funds reconciliation, and your agencies can use this for dedicated funds. Where the two reports differ is that the DAFR 7380 is based on account balances in a fund rather than its transactions. This report displays account balances for unreconciled deposits, cash in treasury restricted, payment outstanding by Treasury Fund, CSD checks outstanding, and AFS checks outstanding. The activity is included in the beginning and end of month totals. We'll go over that more in a minute. Let's go to formatting. For formatting the DAFR 7380, there are a few things to keep in mind. As this is a fiscal month end report, it must be requested with a frequency of monthly or in the month, day, year format, MMDDYY, which is the day of fiscal month close. Check your production calendars for that. This report will only produce on end of month. While you can't request prior months of this report, it will still only produce on end of month, as the inactive accounting event INAE flag will be flipped to Y on the 97 screen. For future reference, the 97 screen is the system management profile and cannot be changed by any agency, so please do not have questions about that. Our special select options for the DAFR 7380 are agency group, which is for sorting the specific agency, 3 characters, you want for the report, or agency group, 2 characters. If you are part of a group, organization code will filter the report by the specific organization code you want. And special select 1 you're mostly going to be using nothing in this because it's for specific agencies, and you just entered that in the agency or group field. However, central reports will use central for this to gather information from all agencies for various purposes. And as an oversight, I apologize that I didn't get an actual example of the DAFR 7380 as it looks on the 91 screen, but the 91 screen looks very similar no matter which report it is on screen. You can see the frequency field in the top right side of the screen, and you can see that's rendered October 4th, 2013 for this specific report. And then you can see the special selects on the left-hand side of the screen, including agency, program code, etc., etc. These are the two fields that you're going to be paying most attention to with the DAFR 7380. So moving on to our example, you can see near the top of the report, cash balance by fund, general ledger for the month of November 2024, elapsed 50%. Underneath this, you'll find two rows, each detailing a different fund with sub-rows for prior cash balance and current cash balance. Moving from left to right, we see the various cash and payment accounts as detailed on the account side, with unreconciled deposit, cash on deposit with Treasury, cash Treasury restricted, etc., etc. In summary, this report gives you the ability to look at a fund and determine what cash and payments were at the start and end of the period. So if you need to know how much unreconciled deposit you have for a specific fund, or how much cash with the Treasury you have on deposit, then this is the report for you. It will tell you the starting balance and the ending balance. For further resources, I would recommend checking out this slide once the slide deck is available for all of you. I have divided the resources into DAFR 73 and DAFR 7380 specific resources, along with general use resources that I used for my research. Any questions so far on the DAFR reports? I do not see any. Go ahead, Amber.
I was just going to say, I don't see any, Scott. Thanks so much.
Well, in that case, I think we'll move on to our next presenter. Presenting in the Screen 90 spotlight, it's Carleen Hancock. Take it away, Carleen.
Penny, let's talk about the a screen that has a lot of information, but I don't think gets enough love and attention, or you just may not know what's there. So gonna go over quick some the 90 screen spotlight. How do you access the 90 screen, you may ask? You can use a link from any screen and type the words 90 or news at the top, a link to. F1 if you're in a screen that is displaying an error. This helps take you to the explanation of the errors and will give you helpful tips on how to resolve. Those that resolve 530 errors know all about this. Information that may impact your work is present. Scheduled archives and purges, which we have talked about today, or perhaps emergency notifications. This information is displayed on the keyword news, page 1. If you're like me, in the morning, first thing, you whip through this with an enter, enter. But there is a space there, so if any information for archives and purchase or emergency notifies will be displayed here. So be on the lookout. Group meetings and dates, modes of training, keyword news, page 3. All of our user groups, our dates, and how it's going to be given. So we have one coming up in May that's going to be in person at DAS West Training Room or online. Woohoo. SFMS analyst. You may not know who your SFMS analyst. This is a quick page to see who your analyst may be. This changes occasionally, so please be aware of this. It's on news page 5, and it also has displays their phone numbers, so your analyst can be contacted that way. Brand new this year, I love this. We are giving a screen for all of our upcoming trainings for 2025 and who, not only what we're going to be giving, but who's going to be giving it and what dates it's going to be on. So this is a really nice screen. I hope it's useful for all of you. Another one, when is INE going to be run? A lot of people want to know this. So that's just, when is our active accounting events going to become inactive accounting event? This is the program that runs it. We do run it on a Sunday. Here are the dates and for what is it going to be impacted, what months are going to be closed, in other words, or moved over to inactive if they're eligible. Month-end close dates. Scott was just talking about this for your report, some of your reports. So when month ends are closing and those dates. So that's a month-end close, page 1. There is more information to be found on the 90 screen. These are just some of the things I think just are handy for us as accountants to know. And but like I said, you can find out more information about requestable reports by using the keyword and the report is being requested. Control reports are not there, but requestable reports are. And error messages can also be pulled by those error message notes. So if you don't hit F1 or if there are multiple error messages, you can go there and just type as many as you want and find error message information galore. So just a handy overview of the 90 screen and of things we as accountants, state accountants especially, and users of RStars kind of need to be aware of. And like I said, I just don't think that 90 screen gets enough love. Any questions? Okay. Oh, thank you. Okay, the next person up is going to be Maria Berglund, and she is going to talk about the stop pay process.
Hi, thank you, Caroline. So a lot of information came your way today. So my section is not that complicated. So let's just go through it very quickly. I just want to update everybody on our project about updating our stop pay process. As everybody knows, since December 2024, we create the stop pay in Microsoft MS forms. So it's not PDF anymore. There is a link in our website under the forms, stop pay. If you hit that, it takes you to the instruction, and from there is a link. And this is a big picture of what you will see. Not very big changes happened. Some of the fields we kind of combined. and try simplify the process for users. And it is much easier to just get to the browser, and it should be available from any browsers. We have not heard any struggles so far, and finger crossed, hopefully it will go all smooth as it is. And the main reason I want to have this section today was about signature section. So as you know, I do not have any authorized people list or authorized person for stop pay. So only way for us to make sure the stop pay submitted, it was reviewed or approved or confirmed by the manager, or it is legit request, it's having that manager email address. So we had some requests came to me with like a user or prepper person put her or his email address in both. If you are not a manager, please make sure include your manager in a manager email address field or your supervisor. That just give us that comfort zone to confirm that comes from the agency, because most of the times agencies have multiple different people submitting this stop pay. And if you consider how large state agencies are, it's impossible for us to make sure it's coming from right people. Second, very important item was we noticed that some users looks like they open the browsers, they open the form and just keep it open. And when they fill it out, the information but submitted next day. So that gives us the 2 different dates. So in order to just make sure MS form comes to us on right time and would not be any delay on the stop pay, because as everybody knows, we process stop pay every day at 1 o'clock. So at 1 o'clock, we get all these stops requests came to us since the day before noon until today's 1 o'clock. So this creates that conflict and can be dropped off from both days, either yesterday, day before, or a day we are processing this stop pay. That is something, just make sure you open your browser fresh and fill it out and submit it in the same time. Don't leave it on your browser for next day. And as soon as you had save my request and submit, both people have to receive a notification. The person prepared the form and put the prepared email address, and the manager. So both that people, individuals have to receive, should receive the notifications. If you prefer not to see that notifications, it is easy in Outlook, just create a separate folder and set the rule. But we encourage managers or supervisors to review the notifications to make sure amount submitted is correct, warrant number submitted is correct, because when it is an issue in any of that information, I have to back and sometimes take a day or so to correct requests come to us, and it would be delay on this stuff. And if it is the big, large amount, you risk the that time to be redeemed. And here's the example of the notification you will receive. And I just want to highlight, we have a chart to help everybody to make a decision about stop the warrant or cancel the warrant. But in very brief guidance, you stop the warrant if it is lost. You do not have the warrant. You don't know where is the warrant. You do not have an access to the vendor to get the physical warrant back. But if you have the warrant on your hand, or it is you can get the warrant back, and then you can fill out the cancellation form and attach the warrant cancel form to physical warrant and mail both to us. Because in order to cancel the warrants, we need the physical warrants on hand. That is the biggest highlight about the warrant cancellation. And please, anytime you had questions, feel free to submit your questions to our warrant stop cancel inbox. This inbox will be reviewed by me, and if I'm out of the office, my backup will have access to this inbox, so your question will be responded in the timely manner. Any questions or concerns? Okay, I hope everybody enjoying our new process and make life easier for you. Thank you, and now we will have Rose.
Thank you, Maria. Let me turn my camera back on here. So Amber, if you could control the slides for me again, please. So this, a little bit of information is related to the agency objects that come through on your payroll transactions from Workday Payroll. Next slide, please. So the Workday pay codes are crosswalked to SFMS controller objects, the D10, in the same manner that they were when we had the OSPA, the Oregon State Payroll System. The comptroller objects for salary and employee benefits use the object series 3 to start with a 3. And historically, agencies have been requested to set up their agency objects or their D11 profiles to match the comptroller objects for the object numbers in that series. Next slide, please. Some agencies recently have experienced miscoding with the D11 agency objects and D10 comptroller objects on payroll transactions that are related to employee travel reimbursements. If you're using Workday Payroll to process travel and expense reimbursements to employees, you will need to make sure your agency object numbers that are used for those expenses mirror the comptroller object number. The objects used by those pay codes, their owning codes, are commonly use an RSTARS controller object number that is in the 4000 series. Next slide, please. This is an example of the report in Workday Payroll that kind of crosswalks the pay codes to the agency objects. The agency objects would be under the account code, and then the Workday Payroll earnings codes are in column D and E that you see on this. This is just an example. There's quite a few of them. Next slide, please. So this is an example of an agency object profile where the D11 equals the D10. So your agency object number and name will match the comptroller object number and name. The transactions using this agency object will post correctly as in state lodging. Next slide, please. This is an example where the agency object D11 does not match the comptroller object. The transactions using the agency object in this example will post as freight expense under office supplies, not as in-state meals with an overnight stay. Next slide, please. This is the controller object profile for controller object 4101 that was shown on the previous slide. Basically, it is for in-state meals with overnight stay. Next slide, please. This is the controller object profile for the comp object 4201 that was shown as the comp object for agency 101, D11 object 4101, which is 4201, which actually posts when it rolls up to the comp object as office services, not in-state travel. Next slide, please. If your agency objects that are used by the payroll earnings codes for expense reimbursement do not match the comptroller objects, you'll need to correct those transactions in your accounting records by using T code 415-416 balance transfer. If it is an option, you may want to consider reorganizing your AY27 agency objects in the 4000 series to match the comptroller objects if you plan to use the payroll system to reimburse your staff for travel expenses. The 11 agency objects profiles should not be updated mid-biennium if they have already been used to record transactions. Updating the AY25 profile will not change any previous transactions that were posted in that AY. If you have any questions related to setting up these agency objects correctly, please contact your SFMS analyst. And then if there's any questions on this, next slide, Amber. And I don't see any questions in the chat, so I guess on to Justin.
All right. Well, I just want to say thank you, everybody, for joining us today. We do really appreciate everyone's participation and questions. We have a question from Mila that we will definitely get back to you on that and follow up with about the stop warrant online process. We do request and appreciate if you would fill out the survey provided in the chat. That gives us an opportunity to learn and adjust to what you, our customers, are looking for in these user groups. So we definitely want to be partners in giving you the information that you would like to have. Also, too, as your John has a request to post a link to the warrant stop web form. So if we could do that, Amber. One more note for this group. I just want to encourage you that as you're emailing with your SFMS analyst and or contact, there is a survey at the bottom of their email signature. And I would really appreciate it if you had a couple moments that you could fill those out so I can hear and read how everybody is doing. And that just enables us all to be a better cohesive group, providing you consistent, clear information. So again, thank you, everybody. And with that, I feel like we can stop the recording and end with a minute to spare. So thank you, everybody. Really appreciate it.